Ciao ragazzi e benvenuti a questa nuova puntata di PizzaTalk. Oggi parleremo dei curdi e tra l'altro oggi abbiamo una particolarità perché il nostro ospite è un curdo ortodosso, quindi abbiamo due particolarità in una. Quindi parliamo di curdi e cosa sono i curdi con Paulos. Hi Paulos, if you want to introduce yourself to our viewers, quindi ti
Hello,
lascio
hi,
presentare al nostro pubblico.
hi, Ivano. My name is Paulos. I live in the United Kingdom, and I'm very happy to be on your show and assist in any questions that you have. It's a pleasure to be here.
Ok, allora, prima cosa, quindi partiamo subito. Cosa sono i curdi? So, what are the Kurds?
Uh, this is a question that has been asked by many historians and um, modern historians, modern anthropologists. Um, the term Kurd uh, has been around for a long time, since around the 23rd century BC. Um, the name Kurd is actually Sumerian. It means those who are from the mountains. If you want me to stop so you can translate,
No, no,
just
no,
let
no,
me.
no, I'll translate with the subtitles, don't worry.
Okay. However, these people always refer to themselves as the Medes or the Medians. And the term Midian was used until even the 17th century, primarily used in the 17th century, but it ceased, and the term Kurd gained dominance. According to the Bible, the Medes are descended from the third son of Japheth, who's the son of Noah. So the very origin of the Kurds is mentioned in Genesis, Madai being the father of all the Kurds.
Ok, ehm, sappiamo che il popolo curdo è uno dei pochi popoli senza stato sostanzialmente. Come la vive una persona curda questa situazione? So, we know that the Kurds are one of the few people that don't have a state, a nation, a nation without a state, okay? Without a country, okay, better. How does a Kurd live this situation?
It depends what Kurd you're speaking to, from which area. Um, the Kurds in what's Iran today have always had their own principalities, such as the Principality of Ardalan. The Kurds in what's Iraq today had the Principality of Soran, the Principality of Baban, and they were independent until 1851. So the Kurds as a whole were independent until the 1850s, when they were conquered by the Ottomans, and some of them were conquered by the Qajar state. Uh, there were other states, 1920s, the Kingdom of Kurdistan, 1927, the Republic of Ararat, uh, so on and so forth, but they were short-lived. The Kurds in Turkey, I would say, are the ones who have the least rights. Their identity is really suppressed. The Kurds in Iraq have some autonomy, so they are de facto independent, but officially they are autonomous. So uh, it depends which Kurd you're speaking to.
Ok. Ehm, ciò che è successo, per esempio, per gli armeni, è successo anche per i curdi? Cioè, what happened to the Armenians happened also to the Kurds, cioè questo emigrare all'estero, questo diaspora. So the diaspora happened also for the Kurds? There was a diaspora?
There was a massive expulsion, much less with the Kurds, because a lot of the Kurds were Muslim in 1915. whereas the majority of Armenians and Assyrians and Greeks were Christian. So they received the worst treatment. But so did many Kurds. Hundreds of thousands of Yazidi and Christian Kurds were genocided, exiled. Many Kurds were actually exiled to Armenia because they were Christian, and so they didn't fit into the millet system of the Ottomans.
Ok, adesso andiamo a vedere cosa sono esattamente i curdi ortodossi. So, what are the orthodox Kurds?
Well, they would be ethnically Kurds who believe in the Orthodox Christian faith. Historically, I would say, there was a good century where Orthodox Kurds were almost non-existent. Just small pockets, maybe in Constantinople, in parts of Hakkari, that remained upon the Orthodox faith. The ones that did survive the genocide were absorbed into Cretan, Armenian, and Pontic communities.
Ok. Quali sono le prospettive, secondo te, del popolo curdo da qui ai prossimi anni? So what's the future of the Kurd people as a whole, in your opinion?
It's very difficult to tell. It's politics.
Just try to...
In my estimation, I think there would be more chances of autonomy in those countries that are occupying what would be Kurdistan. Of course, we are hoping for independence, but I don't think one part taking independence by themselves would solve the situation. There needs to be a consolidated and unified a unification amongst all the Kurds in order to create an independent state.
Pensi che una vera e propria indipendenza, per esempio, del Kurdistan iracheno possa essere il punto di partenza per un Kurdistan autonomo in tutta la regione? Pensi che possa bastare quindi che tutti i curdi poi magari possano migrare, no? Un po' come è stato per Israele? Oppure pensi che se ci sarà un Iraq, in Iraq un Kurdistan indipendente, si andrà verso una guerra vera e propria? Do you think that if there's a real independence declared by the Iraqian Kurdistan,
Mhm.
that could trigger a series of the independence movements, or do you think that an independent Iraqian Kurdistan could be a nation, a little Kurdistan that can bring all the Kurd people to a nation like Israel? Or do you think that if Iraqi Kurdistan declares independence, there will be a war?
There has been wars. The last one was 2017, which unfortunately a lot of the leadership in Iraqi Kurdistan, they're not from the grassroots. They're not from the people. They are controlled by outsiders, and so they look after their own interests and not the interests of the Kurdish people. I think if there is a real nationalist head that creates an independent Kurdistan in what's Iraq today, it could lead very possibly to independence movements in the north, in the east, so in Turkey, in Iran, even in Syria. There's a lot of chance in Syria, since the Kurds in Syria control large amounts of the country.
But don't you think that non pensi che la posizione della Turchia sia molto forte in questo? Cioè, don't you think that Erdogan's position and Turkey's position might be too strong regarding this possible movement?
It's not just Erdogan's position. it's a Turkish position that they have a famous saying: if the Kurds pitch up a tent in Africa, we will go and destroy it. So um, it's of course there will be opposition, but I think Turkey, um, as a state, is now in a very vulnerable position economically and politically, and things will change in the future.
Ok, adesso ti voglio fare un'ultima domanda, giusto per curiosità personale, perché comunque il caso dei curdi ortodossi è molto strano, è molto particolare quantomeno. I curdi ortodossi sono visti in modo particolare, cioè c'è un certo rapporto, un rapporto magari non proprio sano, diciamola così, con i curdi islamici, poi immagino gli yazidi, chissà come. Do you think that Orthodox Kurds are treated in a different way or in a not so good way by um, Kurds that are Muslim?
That's a very good question. A lot of the Orthodox Kurds are diaspora, so they don't live in predominantly Kurdish areas. They live in either Russia, Georgia, Armenia, and Western Europe or America. If Orthodox Kurds were to go back to Kurdistan, I think Iranian Kurds are very tolerant.
Mhm.
Syrian Kurds, I would imagine the same. Unfortunately, there's a massive change amongst Iraqi Kurds because of a lot of Saudi-sponsored missionaries that are spreading Wahhabism
Mm.
in what we call Bashur, which is Iraqi Kurdistan. So I think they'll face a lot of problems in Iraq.
E pensi che questo sia dovuto anche al fatto che comunque l'immagine del curdo che abbiamo, soprattutto in Occidente, è del curdo musulmano? So you think that maybe there's a problem even with the typical stereotypical image we have of the Kurd as an Islamic one, an Islamic person? Do you think there's a problem even here?
I think the stereotypical image of the Kurds is that they are very secular and
Mm.
tolerant Muslims, which is true for the most part, but that is changing at the moment. And the war against ISIS back in 2014 did spark a lot of changes, did pique people's interest in Zoroastrianism. So the Zoroastrian temples in Kurdistan all of a sudden started having converts, but that changed very quickly. People are more than ever um, going back to Islam, taking their Islamic religion seriously, but not the method that their ancestors were upon, which is a more Kurdish Islam, which doesn't really exist anymore now. That's being replaced with more extremist and Wahhabist ideas.
Okay. If you just wanted to add something before we greet each other and depart, you can say whatever you want. Se vuoi dirci qualcos'altro prima che ci salutiamo, puoi dire quello che vuoi. Magari qualcosa di interessante.
Right. Thank you for that. I'd like to thank yourself, Ivano, and your dear listeners. If you want to know more about the Kurds, I recommend one historian. His name is Soran Hamarash. He's he's written a book recently in English, The Untold Story of the Kurds, where he takes our history from the time of the Sumerians and Babylonians up until the medieval era. Uh, that's where I would leave it. And another thing I'd like to say is a lot of what you read on the internet about our people are lies about our history, especially because there's a lot of colonial um, interests in writing history. So our history is mostly um, either twisted or under the dust.
Ok. Grazie mille Paolo, sei stato molto interessante, è stata tutto molto interessante, questa intervista è stata super super diversa dal solito, perché comunque abbiamo avuto degli argomenti belli tosti. Thank you so much Paulos, it was a great interview. Ragazzi, mi raccomando, iscrivetevi al canale e commentate qui sotto, mi raccomando. And thank you again, Paulos.
Thank
See
you
you.
for this opportunity. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure for me too. Grazie Paulos, alla prossima.
Bye.
Bye
Ciao.
bye.
Bye.